Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
The Storm Pirates by Drinor. What if Luffy never ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi? Instead, he devours the Arashi Arashi no Mi, the Storm fruit, gaining the power of tempests, lightning, and wind itself. With the power of the storm in his hands, Monkey D. Luffy will turn the world upside down and forge a new legend as the captain of the Storm Pirates. Big shout out to the warlords of this channel: Throat Punch, Rodarius Jones, Native Warrior, Claude Lefrace, Neo-Esker 23, Derek Dowdy, Zazu Syaz, Abdul Rauf Ali, N3WT, What If Lord, Black Money Young Leon, Garrick Russell, Case Clark, KSGPL4YZ, and Brian McKenzie. You know who you are. Want to stand among the warlords? Join the channel membership and show your support. Adios!
The following day after leaving Nami and Negico's home, the sun was just rising, and everyone was waking up. Luffy woke up first before the rest of the crew. Rubbing his eyes, he felt the warm naked body of Nami, her arms around his neck, her head resting on his chest, a smile on her face. Luffy could feel her chest pressing against his chest. It made him hard all over again. Luffy slowly, trying to move her arms away, not wanting to wake her up, moving her arms and head away. He slowly moved his legs out of bed's frame before standing up, completely naked, his cock still hard. The smell of Nami didn't help. Nami opened her eyes, seeing Luffy wanting to walk away. As the captain tried to grab his pants from the floor, he suddenly felt a hand on his hardness. Luffy could barely hold a moan as Nami started rubbing his cock. Nami, Luffy moaned as Nami pressed a finger on her lips, with a growing smirk as she leaned closer. "Let me take care of you," she said, her voice full of lust. Her voice alone made him completely mesmerized. She had that ability always to turn him on. Nami's smirk grew as she took his entire length. Later Nami licked her fingers as Luffy felt much better. He sat down, wanting to reward his Nami, but the navigator shook her head. "Don't worry, Luffy, you can make me scream tonight," she said, kissing his cheek, before standing up, swaying her hips, her round ass, almost torturing Luffy. She was completely naked, as she was swaying her hips before crouching to grab her underwear, but doing it extremely slowly. "Oh, Luffy," Nami moaned as he was kissing her ass cheeks before licking her womanhood. Nami was concerned the others might hear her. Still, the moment his tongue started exploring her, she completely forgot about it, allowing her captain to have his way with her. Later everyone was in the kitchen. Nami was shining, her face like the sun, sitting close to Luffy. Negico knew what her sister had been up to. She glanced at Luffy and wondered what made Nami fall in love with him. As they were eating, Luffy suddenly turned serious, glancing at his crew. He coughed, gaining everyone's attention. "Alright, right now, we are making our way to Loguetown, and then we will go to Grand Line. That place is no joke. The Marines will be stronger, and so will the other pirate crews. That's why we will double our training," Luffy stated. Zoro smirked, liking the idea, and so did Sanji and Nami. Usopp paled while Negico wasn't sure what to expect. "But before we start today, I need to show you something," Luffy stated before standing up, grabbing a small chest from a bag. Sanji had seen that bag, but his captain told him not to touch it. Putting the chest on the table, Nami was about to ask what was inside. When Luffy opened it, inside was what looked like fruit. Everyone immediately knew what this was. "I found this devil fruit in the forest in the Konami Islands," Luffy stated, much to Negico and Nami's surprise. They thought how was possible that they hadn't found it before. "What will we do with it?" Usopp asked, wondering if any of them would eat it or would they simply sell it. "I'm sorry, but can someone explain which fruit is this?" Negico suddenly asked, knowing from Nami what a devil fruit was. "This is a devil fruit known as Tori Tori no Mi model. Taiyo Shishin is a mythical zone devil fruit. Now, does anyone wants it?" Luffy asked, looking at Zoro, who immediately shook his head in denial. "I'm a swordsman. I don't need a devil fruit," Zoro simply stated, putting his hands behind his back and resting his head on the chair's back. Luffy nodded, understanding his reason, before looking at Sanji, who smoked a cigarette before shaking his head. "No thanks, I have my eyes on another devil fruit," he stated. Many women around the world suddenly felt shivers of disgust in their spine. Usopp shook his head, much to their surprise. "Nah, I'm a marksman. You said Shanks's crew has no one with devil fruits, that includes my father," he stated with pride. Luffy smiled before looking at Nezuko, who thought of it before shaking her head. "I want to be an adventurer. I don't need a devil fruit," she stated before everyone's eyes turned to look at Nami. "What abilities does this devil fruit gives?" "Not sure, but this devil fruit is based on the story of Ra, the guardian of the sun." Luffy started leaning the chest closer to Nami, who grabbed it in her arms. Nami looked at the fruit. The fruit was shaped like a pineapple. At the side were red wings with frames that looked like flames, a yellow flame on the top shaped like a bird head, and blue bottom. Before anyone could say anything else, Nami bites a big chunk. She knew it would taste horrible. As she swallowed quickly, the taste registered, almost making her vomit. She dropped the fruit on the floor as she stood up. The chair fell to the floor. After the taste disappeared, Nami looked at her arms and chest but felt nothing new. "Did it work?" Nami asked, looking at Luffy, who simply pointed at her legs. She looked down to see her legs looked like they were made of gold. "Eehhhh," almost the whole crew yelled, especially Nami, who was shocked. "Calm down, Nami, I will help you," Luffy stated. Nami calmed down and nodded, knowing her captain would help her. They walked to the ship's main deck. Luffy explained to the others what they would train today before turning to Nami, now having golden arms and legs. Nami quite liked the feeling. It felt warm, but not to burn, but just simply very calming. "Alright, Nami, today I will teach you how to turn your body back to normal. We won't try to turn you fully into your full extent since that can be quite dangerous to do here," her captain explained, pointing at the ship in the end. Nami nodded in understanding. That day, they found an abandoned island, soon training. Luffy would check the rest of his crew every now and then to test them in hockey and tell them what they should train before training Nami. Within a few days, Nami was finally able to turn her body back to normal. "Very good, Nami. Tomorrow, we will start training you on how to access a bit of your devil fruit's potential," Luffy stated, knowing to reach the maximum level fully would take years. After 2 weeks, they finally left the island. Nami only being able to turn her arms and legs into what looked like gold. Her skin was much harder to harm after turning. Nami was able to conquer small blasts of winds by moving her wings. Luffy stated that learning how to fly would be beneficial. Nami understood that not being able to swim, being able to fly could save her one day. She immediately started trying to teach herself how to fly, so far only slowing her fall but not actually flying. Navy headquarters of the East Blue, an emergency meeting has been called. Many officers have left whatever job they were doing to enter this meeting. Apparently, a new pirate crew had popped out and is already creating panic amongst the Marines of East Blue. Usually, a new pirate crew wouldn't be something they would care much about, but this one was different, much more different. "So you're saying the Marines of East Blue can't handle these s?" one captain inquired of the green-haired guy in front of a board at the front of the room, who had a significantly receding hairline. "They have been defeating big-name pirates left and right, and from our informer, the captain even fought the warlord Mihawk and was able to stand his ground." "That's concerning." One of the commanders nodded in agreement. "They have appeared out of nowhere and already changing everything around the East Blue. We can't let them just walk around and destroy everything." Not only that, but apparently, the Straw Hat Pirates had also established that Kokoyasi village is part of their territory, one captain stated. "They did what?" One angry captain immediately shouted in anger. "Who do they think they are? The Marines control all the seas, no exceptions," one with green hair declared, followed by nods, but 2 captains just rolled their eyes, knowing, not even close. "If that's the case, that means you never heard of the 4 emperors," one with purple hair. The others glared at him but decided to ignore him. "What did that pirate do to Kokoyasi village?" another asked, knowing a pirate with territory would mean bad news for both the Marines and the people living in said territory. "He eliminated Arlong, the Saw, who apparently has had an established territory there for years. Not only that, but he had killed many innocent people there if they didn't pay him a monthly fee," the captain stated with a grave tone, knowing the upcoming storm. "What do you mean? How come we didn't get intel on this earlier? One captain asked as many others started getting nervous at the thought of a pirate like Arlong getting away with something like this. Appears Captain Nizumi and his subordinates covered up for him in exchange for money, he stated, earning many shouts of anger. Many immediately started calling for his head, some even shouting for him to be burned alive in a pile in front of everyone to be a clear message to everyone. Off with his head, everyone should see what happens to S like him, one captain shouted angrily. We have already made that decision, but back on what we talked about, the new crew is strong and should not be underestimated, he said, followed by nods until one raised his hand. What should we do about their territory? Clearly, we can't allow it to be in the hands of pirates, he asked, many thinking the same. Right now, they're most likely sailing towards Loguetown. Once they arrive there, Captain Smoker will deal with all of them. He has already dealt with every pirate who wanted to go to the Grand Line. Once Straw Hats are imprisoned or killed, we can take back the territory in the name of justice, he finished with a shout at the end. Once the shouting died down, one started scratching his ass as he spoke. We shouldn't underestimate them, don't forget all the pirate crews they defeated, one stated with a boring expression on his face. His face had a slash mark that went from the top of his forehead, through his left eye all the way to his cheekbones. His eyes were different colors. The left eye was dark green, while the other was dark yellow. He wore an open emerald color shirt, he had long dark purple hair. In his chest was a word burned on his skin, see. Why is that Captain Shinny? One asked, looking at the man who was actually younger than everyone else here. Captain Ketsueki Shinny, 19 years old, 1.86 centimeters, long dark purple hair. Just look at the pirates he killed or defeated, and you will understand, he answered, bored, before throwing him the poster of Arlong. While he started scratching his back again, not caring. Exactly. Branu nodded and pointed to the bounty posters on the bulletin board. Buggy, the clown, with a 15 million berry bounty. The Buggy pirates were crushed by only 3 people and remained the only active crew. He then directed his finger to the next poster. Kuroa 8000 plans, a long dead guy with a 16 million berry bounty. He and the whole Black Cat pirates, including Django, the hypnotist, and the Miaoban brothers, were wiped out to the last man. Branu shifted his weight to point to the next poster. Pirate Admiral, Don Krieg, with a 17 million berry bounty. The whole Krieg crew, and Iron Shield, Pearl, was also wiped out to the last man. Each of these bounties is more than $3 million more than the East Blue average. A female captain raised her hand. So were the Arlong pirates, they were all killed, but we didn't find 2 pirates from the crew. We think they must have escaped underwater during the fighting. We think that each member of this new crew warrants a bounty, given how rapidly these established pirate crews were wiped off and with such a tiny crew accomplishing so. The captains may seem to be particularly high, but we have proof that he has a devil fruit. A devil fruit is uncommon in the East Blue, and a pirate who has one will always be subjected to an instant bounty of appropriate magnitude. This is the Straw Hat pirate crew and their bounties. As he turned the board to show 5 fresh bounty posters, the green-haired lieutenant commander said. Can you stop that? One female captain asked, looking at Captain Shinny. Stop what? You know what, she countered with disgust in her tone. If I'm bothering you, then just don't pay attention to me, he said, bored, before deciding to leave the boring meeting. 1 week later the day was slow, hot, and boring. For Sanji and Nijiko, it was hell on earth. The 2 poor, unfortunate souls had asked to start training more than before, at the same level as Zoro, and, well, it didn't go well. While Luffy tortured the ship's cook and ship's healer, as Nijiko had been officially assigned, with the best of intentions, the rest of the crew went about their own training. The screams of mercy and death threats from their 2 newest nakama provided amusing background noise. A nervous pelican found itself the object of Nami's ire as it waited dutifully for more payment. Are you kidding me? They increased the prices again? Nami waved her arms about, generating annoyance and haki almost unconsciously, which of course, made the bird even more frightened. Reluctantly, her thirst for knowledge triumphing over her avarice in a bloody victory, Nami withdrew another coin and dropped it in the pelican's pouch. The fee paid. The bird allowed the scary woman to take a newspaper before it took to the skies at a full aviation sprint. Usopp, who was making his mad scientist impression, looked up from his current work. I don't see why you're still so stingy, Nami. It's not like you need to save up to free your village anymore, and we have a lot of gold. That was true. From all the gold and treasure they had collected so far, the crew had almost 50 million berries to use for the ship, supplies, and different things. Nami glared at the marksman as if he had just thrown a bloody carcass at her. That's my point, Usopp. Now I get to keep every cent for myself. Usopp shook his head and returned to his latest concoction. Zoro was training insanely, as per usual. Shirtless and drenched in sweat, the swordsman was lifting massive weights in each hand and swinging them like swords while holding a smaller weight with his teeth and maintaining perfect balance. In a parallel dimension, Zoro just did calisthenics and 2-armed swings. This Zoro, who had his eyes open to just how big the power gaps could be between him and someone from the Grand Line, trained as obsessively and psychotically as he had when he was training to fight Kuina. Zoro had attained a state of ultimate focus. Every twitch of his muscles was noted, compensated, and otherwise used to help the greater whole. The world had shrunk to himself and his weights, the outside world nothing more than a set of distractions that he paid no heed to. 5,512. 5,513. The man gasped to himself while his inner thoughts reflected on his comparative weakness. I couldn't even touch Mihawk. My hockey was all but worthless against him. I have to keep getting stronger, faster, better so that I can have that match with Mihawk and win. With that mental rant, Zoro upped his training up a notch, starting to move through his various kata while balancing the half-metric ton weights. Sanji and Negico were huddled together near the aft. The two of them were honestly quivering in their boots. Where is he? Where is he? Where the hell is he? Negico muttered to herself, her eyes swiveling in their sockets like a madwoman. I don't know. We'd better make a break for it now. There has to be an island nearby or something, Sanji muttered back, seriously considering jumping ship. A second bout with starvation on a deserted island would be preferable to this freaking ship of psychotic, well-intentioned horrors. A living nightmare suddenly discovered them. Wow, you guys are already trying to run away, let's continue. Without even looking up, Usopp leaned to the space he once occupied. Oi, Luffy. Try to aim somewhere else. This is my super powerful deluxe Tabasco star. If anyone gets hit in the eyes with this, it would be a catastrophe. Luffy cocked his head to the side. Catastrophe? That sounded cool. Before Luffy could begin his usual destructive idiocy, however, Zoro finished his workout with a massive strike from all three weights. The slipstream and displaced air were enough to send the featherweight ball of evil spicy doom right out of Usopp's fingers and straight into his eyes. The marksman stood still for a second in a moment of orderly shock. Then the pain kicked in. An inferno that was as tall as some mountains flew up from Usopp's face, and the extravagant coward went through the standard procedure for such events. Running around at supersonic speeds, screaming his ass off. My eyes, my beautiful eyes are burning. Someone, please gouge them out or something. Throw me into the sea. Stick my head in the freezer. Do something, you crazy maniacs. Luffy was laughing. Sanji and Negico, while recovering slightly faster than they had the previous episode, were still too indisposed to help their nakama. Zoro calmly toweled himself off, knowing that an actual shower was an unattainable luxury, before throwing his sweaty towel with incredible accuracy straight into Usopp's face. It was unhygienic, sure, but the salty sweat immediately doused the burning. As Usopp debated whether to be grateful or disgusted, Nami looked up from her paper, which she had been reading for the entire time. Would you all just calm down? I'm trying to relax here. Nami shook her head before returning to the news. The world's going crazy. The government's grip keeps on slipping. There's a rebellion on St. Elba's right now. The revolutionaries are getting more active, the price on coal's going up, Luffy's got a wanted poster. What the heck? As numerous bits of paper dropped from the newspaper, the navigator shouted. Nami, you alright? Luffy inquired as he knelt beside her. A few seconds later, Zoro, Sanji, and Negico appeared, heading down Mary's back steps. Take a look at this. Nami screamed and pointed at the papers spread out on the deck. As she stared at them, the orangeette seemed to be a little blue in the face. Luffy gazed at the papers, puzzled. only for a huge grin to sweep over his face a split second later. Dead or alive? Luffy grabbed the bounty. The picture was perfect in everything. He couldn't wait to see his brother's reaction and even his grandpa. Nami smacked him in the head with her fist as a result of the laughing that ensued. How come you're so thrilled about it? Nami was adamant. This can only suggest headquarters is involved. Because of this, we may be swarmed by bounty hunters and marines. With crocodile tears streaming down her cheeks, the navigator sank back on her lounge chair. Hey! Zoro grinned when he saw his likeness on a bounty poster. How come the idiot's bounty is higher than mine? When Sanji saw the difference in quantities between his and Zoro's bounties, he grumbled. What's going on? Usopp inquired. Holy crap, when he saw his face on a bounty poster, he sobbed. Nezuko pouted that she had no bounty yet, but knowing she had just joined, it was to be expected. Wanted dead or alive Monkey D. Luffy 70 million berry. Luffy burst out laughing. How much he wished to see his brother's reaction to this. Luffy's giant grin in the poster really didn't paint him as a big scary pirate but more like a boy full of joy. Wanted dead or alive Roronoa Zoro 49 million berry. Zoro smirked as he read his own poster. Anyone who saw his bounty poster would immediately recognize him. He knew his three-sword technique would get famous by him. Wanted dead or alive Nami, Bulgar Cat, 27 million berry. Nami let out a sigh as she examined her poster. She knew this was taken when they were in Baratie. She looked good, but the expression on her face screamed, danger. Wanted dead or alive Sanji 36,666,000 berry as he smoked a cigarette. Sanji nodded. He was still irritated that the moss head had a bigger bounty than him, but he'd put it aside for the time being. The poster showed him kicking Krieg pirates. Wanted dead or alive Usopp 15 million berry. Usopp squealed with delight when he read his bounty poster. When Kaya, Pepper, Carrot, and Onion saw this, they would flip out. He was now a true pirate. Let's get this celebration started. Zoro, Usopp, Nezuko, and Sanji greeted Luffy's joyful exclamation with applause. Sure, I haven't drank in a long time, Luffy said before grabbing Nami's hand and walking inside, followed by a grumbling Sanji who looked ready to kick a certain captain. Zoro was grinning from all the torture the cook was getting. Usopp was praying for his well-being while Nezuko quiet liked that Nami was happy. Somewhere, holy shitty, a shout was heard throughout the air as footsteps ran closer to the location of the shout. Sabo-kun, you alright? Koala asked, concerned, running towards him. Seeing him lying on his back in the grass, Sabo laughing like a madman, a newspaper in his hand. After he stopped laughing, he stood up and showed her the paper. This is my brother's first bounty, Sabo said, still smiling. Grabbing the newspaper, she read the bounty, raising an eyebrow in surprise. Wow, this is very impressive for an East Blue bounty, she stated, knowing how much Sabo loved his brothers. The blonde laughed again. I can almost hear Ace shouting. Moby, no. A shout of despair was heard in the main deck by a certain Ace who was clenching his teeth. The others quickly asked him what was wrong, but much to their surprise, Ace burst out laughing. Lying on the floor, still looking at the newspaper. He really did it, Ace simply said with a smile before rushing to his father and reaching his chair. Look, Pops, this is my little brother's first bounty, Ace said, handing him the poster. Whitebeard looked at it before laughing. Gurararara, is the storm brat right? He asked with a grin as Ace nodded. Yes, at least it shows him how he is instead of a big scary pirate, Ace stated, smiling. Marco checked the poster before whistling. That's rather a big bounty for an East Blue pirate, yoi, he stated, earning a glare from Ace since technically he was from East Blue as well. Marco then grew a smirk on his face. Isn't his first bounty higher than yours? He asked with a teasing smirk. Hey, who cares anyway? Bounties are not everything, Ace said, slightly annoyed, his crew members laughing behind him. As Ace tried to stop his crewmates from laughing in his face, Whitebeard suddenly remembered something. Ace, you said he ate the Arashi no Emi fruit? Whitebeard suddenly asked. Much to their surprise, his voice was serious. Yes, father, Ace answered quickly, not understanding why he was serious all of a sudden. I see, Monkey D. Luffy? Well played, Dragon. It seems you are more cunning than I thought. An island god knows where. "Boss, we have a visitor," a pirate screamed as he raced over to his captain, who was half asleep from drinking the whole night. "Calm down, it's too early, and I've got a hangover," Shanks waved the guy away, evidently oblivious to or unconcerned about the fact that it was past noon. "I notice you're still behaving so casually." From behind the startled pirate, Mihawk said. The presence of the warlord immediately put everyone on guard except Shanks, who grinned even more, if that was possible. "Oh, Hawkeyes, it's been a long time since we've seen each other." The warlord was hailed by Shanks. "I'm not feeling well right now. Did you come for a match?" "I'm not interested in fighting you when you're drunk," Mihawk said. "Just a few weeks ago, I met some interesting pirates. One of them reminded me of a child from East Blue who I met." He then displayed the bounty posters of Luffy and his gang. There's no way. As soon as he saw the big grin, Usopp's eyes widened at seeing the poster of his son amongst the pile of new posters, and he broke into a broad smile. "So, Luffy, you've made it." Shanks gave the poster a kind grin. "Well, Hawkeyes, after delivering something like this to me, I can't let you leave." As he gazed at Shanks, Mihawk's eyes widened slightly. A flagon was put in front of the world's greatest swordsman and filled with liquor in a matter of seconds. "Of course." Mihawk trailed off, a faint moan in his throat. "Ha ha ha, come on, Hawkeyes, drink some more," Shanks chuckled as the red hair pirates erupted in laughter and joy. "Today is going to be a celebration." "Didn't you already have a hangover?" As he took up the whole flagon, Mihawk questioned. "Now is the time to rejoice," Shanks burst out laughing. "Please," Mihawk groaned before downing the flagon all at once, much to Shanks' delight. "Man, who would have guessed? Right from the outset, Luffy has 70 million on his head, ha 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 ha." "Party's bar, Fuchsia Village, Luffy's famous now," a villager exclaimed as he showed the bounty poster to everyone. 70 million already? They exclaimed in union. "It seems our village might actually get famous for producing such a famous pirate." "Be quiet, all of you," Mayor Whoopslap ordered all of them. "Our village is getting known for having a famous pirate is nothing to be proud of." "Calm down, Mayor." Makino smiled softly as she handed him a drink. "Luffy looks so happy. His dream is to become a great pirate." She smiled at the poster. His dream or his fate? Whoopslap wondered out loud before drinking. Navy HQ is Garp prepared to eat another donut. This time, he would definitely break the world record even if it meant death. The door slammed open, falling to the ground causing a big metallic sound to echo throughout the room. Garp didn't bother to look who it was as Sengoku slammed a bunch of posters in front of his face, crashing the whole table along with it. "Is your damn family again, Garp?" Sengoku almost spit fire from his mouth. Garp just quirked an eyebrow, not caring as he picked his ears before grabbing the first poster thinking Ace had done something else when his eyes read the name and the bounty. "H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A." Garp laughed loudly as tears streamed down his face while Sengoku looked red in the face, almost like a tomato. "That's my grandson," Garp stated before earning a punch from his best friend. As Going Merry was sailing towards Loguetown, underwater, reading the wanted poster, a grin appeared on his face before releasing a sigh. Grabbing the sword in his right hand, a strange white hat on his head. "Our roads will join soon. Monkey D. Luffy. We are approaching land," Usopp cried out from the next, looking at the land with his binoculars. It looked like a very normal town to him. A part of him not understanding how the Pirate King was executed in such a simple town. One would think a man like him would be executed in a more important town or city. He shrugged his shoulders before deciding to climb down. Luffy smiled brightly, standing on the Going Merry figure, holding his hat with his right hand from flying away because of the wind blowing past him. He had heard about the town, and he couldn't wait to see the platform where the Pirate King had died. He wanted to see what he had seen in his last moments. "So this is Loguetown. Looks nothing special," Nijiko commented as Nami was approaching Luffy, who jumped from the figure right in front of his lover. "What do you think?" Nami asked as Luffy snugged his arm around her waist. Nami grabbed his hat and put it on her head. Luffy didn't mind. After all, only people he treasured had the right to hold the hat. Giving her a quick kiss on the lips, "Looks good, but I'm more excited to see the platform," Luffy answered as the crew reached the ship's main deck. As Going Merry reached the docks, the crew left the ship to admire the city before them. Nijiko had to admit that it looked beautiful from closer. "Wow, what a big city!" Luffy shouted in amazement. In front of them was a wooden platform with the town's name written on it. "So here is where the age of pirates started," Sanji said as he lightened up a cigarette. It was quite beautiful. "Makes you wonder why he was executed here of all places?" Usopp wondered out loud, looking at the buildings. This town was clearly bigger than any other place he had been so far. The Pirate King was born in this town. That's why he was executed here, Luffy answered as he stood in front of his crew. "Anyway, this will be a good place to refill our supplies. With the amount of food you eat, we will need a whole Sea King," Sanji commented, smoking his cigarette. Thankfully, they weren't short on money. "I will go and see if they have several things I need. This town is bigger than any other town. I hope they have what I need." Usopp checked on the list he had made. It was quite a long list, including parts for a project he thought would be quite beneficial for the crew and Going Merry. "I need to grab some medicine, including syringes, antibiotics, alcohol, bandages, the 5 types of scissors, trauma shears, bandage scissors, surgical scissors, Mayo scissors, iris scissors, disposable gloves, and many other things," Nijiko stated, checking on her list. While she wasn't the best doctor, her village's constant injuries from Arlong forced her to study medicine. Many people were beaten up and sometimes even maimed by Arlong's crew. Nijiko had been forced to read how to heal wounds. It wasn't much, but that's all she could do. Nami nodded at her sister, looking at her list over her shoulder. She wouldn't hesitate to give money to Nijiko, not mentioning it was for medicine. "I will need to buy 2 new swords. My old ones broke," Zoro said, checking on his swords. Nami's eyes suddenly turned to Barry when she heard that. "I'll lend you the money, Zoro, at 300% interest," Nami said cheerfully. Zoro murmured, "Which," under his breath and was about to decline her offer when. "No," Luffy simply stated, looking at Nami with a serious look, not the one he usually wore on his face. Nami was about to protest, but Luffy continued. "I don't want my crew not to have the weapon or equipment because we were a bit greedy," Luffy said. "But Luffy," Nami cried crocodile tears. "We're not short on cash, and we're on our way to the Grand Line. I don't want Zoro to be saddled with a terrible pair of swords or not give money to Usopp for his items. What happens if one of us gets sick and we can't do anything because we decided to save money?" Luffy stated, looking at his crew. They all nodded with smiles. Even Nami understood his point. "All right, Luffy," Nami said with a fake grin as she wiped away her tears. Her captain laughed at her cute face. "Remember that we are wanted people now. Therefore the less time we spend here, the higher the chances of not causing trouble with the Marines," Luffy said to his crew despite knowing the chances of actually sailing away without actually causing trouble were pretty slim if not zero. "How much will you need, Zoro?" Luffy asked, looking at his crewmate, who pondered for a moment before answering. "A good sword will cost at least 100,000 berry," Zoro said, pointing at his swords. Luffy knew that was way too cheap for a good sword. He didn't know much about sword prices, but even he knew that was a bit cheap. One time he had asked Hawkeye how much his sword was worth. "A sword like mine is worth 1 billion berries to 2 billion berry." Looking at his only sword that wasn't torn apart from Mihawk. "What about this one? This one survived Hawkeye's attack?" Luffy asked, pointing at his sword. Zoro unsheathed his sword before looking at his captain. "A sword like this should be at least 1 million, if not 2 million, Zoro answered, sheathing his sword. "Nami, give him 5 million berries," Luffy ordered. The navigator pulled out the money before reaching out for Zoro to grab. Zoro grabbed the money or tried immediately, noticing that his nakama wasn't letting go of them before eventually letting him get the money, with tears streaming down her face. Nijiko watched with amusement. Her sister always had a thing about money. "Greedy witch," Zoro grumbled as he put the money in a pocket, walking away trying to find a store alone, which probably wasn't the brightest of ideas. "How much do you think you'll need, Usopp?" Luffy inquired, looking at Usopp now, who scratched his chin, trying to come up with a reasonable number, not wanting to be on Nami's bad side, especially now that she had a devil fruit. "How about 300,000 berry?" he said. Nami gave the money, this time without much opposition, much to Usopp's relief, who left a sigh, immediately walking away. "Sanji?" Luffy asked. The chief was looking up at the sky, murmuring different food names and different flavors. "I'd think 5,000 should be enough," Sanji said before walking away, but the crew left noticed he was walking towards a group of ladies instead of the market. "What about you, Nijiko?" Luffy asked, turning at the doctor of the group. Nijiko raised her hand, spreading out her fingers, as she started counting the things she needed in her mind. 50,000 berries should be enough, Captain, Nijiko said. Nami gave her the money. "Meet me in the store after you're done," Nami said as Nijiko nodded and walked away, checking on different shops. "I'm going to buy clothes, Luffy, perhaps even something special for you, Luffy," she said seductively, the last part on Luffy's ears, who grinned. Walking away, she turned to her captain again. "Don't cause problems," she shouted as she walked away. "Of course, Nami," Luffy smiled broadly. Walking towards the town center, Luffy noticed the sign pointing at the execution platform, making it easier to find. Sanji, after leaving the company of the beautiful ladies, much to his displeasure, he was looking around the market. He had to agree this was quite a good market, especially the different types of food, but mostly was different types of fish. They even were selling dark fish, which was known for his skin that presumably was good for healing. Finally, stopping after reaching a merchant. "What type of fish is this?" Sanji asked with a surprised face, the giant fish with elephant-like characteristics. He'd never seen one before, he wondered how good it would taste. "This here is an elephant true blue fin," the fisherman said proudly. "It's a fish most frequently found in the South Blue, but on rare occasions, you may catch them in the East Blue as well. I just reeled this one in with my fishing pole this morning." "Wow, quite a good catch," Sanji said, complimenting the fish. "At me to slice up some of it for you, sir," the fisherman said, delighted to sell his finest catch. "Don't worry about it. I'll purchase the entire thing," Sanji said, and the fisherman reciprocated with a smile. "Thank you for your patronage, sir," exclaimed the fisherman as he swiftly wrapped the enormous, heavy fish in thick paper. Sanji laughed as he drew out the requisite berry for the fish. He also bought dark fish in case it was needed later. After giving the money to the merchant, he grabbed the fish, resting it over his shoulder. The merchant asked if he needed help to carry it, but Sanji dismissed him with a shake of his head. "Now, to bring this back to the Mary," Sanji murmured as he began walking. As he was walking towards the ship through the market. "Hey, did you hear about what happened in North Blue, in the Germa Kingdom?" one whispered to another. Sanji's eyes widened slightly, the image of a mask on his face suddenly flashed through his eyes like lightning strikes. The cigarette from his mouth fell, his feet rushing forward, not wanting to hear whatever they were talking about. "Why? What happened?" the other merchant asked, intrigued, but Sanji had already walked away, out of earshot, not wanting to hear more about it. 3 minutes later, he noticed Usopp and noted the enormous pack the gunman was carrying, especially a few metal parts sticking out of his bag. As Usopp walked, the bag on his arms made a metallic sound. "Yo, Usopp, help me out a little," Sanji said. "What's that enormous fish?" Usopp exclaimed as he turned to face his crewmate. His eyes goggled at the sight of the gigantic elephant tuna. "I just purchased it, nice and fresh," Sanji said as he hefted it in his hands. "Help me carry it." "Yes, sure," Usopp agreed since it couldn't be that heavy, right? "Thank you," Sanji said. While they were carrying the fish, Sanji noticed a beautiful woman standing there, who winked at him. His eyes turned to hearts immediately. "Such a beauty," Sanji shouted, wanting to walk to the woman. Usopp facepalmed. Marine Base Loguetown. "Sir, Captain Smoker." As he entered the room, an ensign saluted his superior. There was a lot of smoke in the room. On the sofa in front of him, a white-haired guy was putting pebbles on the coffee table. The guy had already built an excellent tower of 7 rocks. "What exactly is it?" As he placed the 8th rock on top of the stack, Smoker inquired, hoping this marine wouldn't distract him from what he was doing. "We've received reports that the Straw Hat Pirate's Jolly Roger was observed docked earlier," the ensign said. "What should we do?" Smoker instead ignored trying to balance his rocks when they all fell down on the floor. "Don't throw me off and break my concentration." The white-haired man put on his coat, which was white with dark blue fur lining the hem, cuffs, and collar of the garment. Several cigars were also strapped to the left side of the jacket as if they were some kind of ammunition. The smoking man then grabbed an oversized jeet and strapped it to his back. The ensign said, Petty Officer Tashigi went to collect her sword from the weapons store she frequents. As they proceeded through the base, Smoker said, Still, how many hours does it take? A tiny girl bumped against Smoker's leg as they exited the base and into the city streets. Smoker looked down at the girl whose eyes were streaming tears, looking sadly at her ice cream. Captain Smoker, screamed the frightened father. Please pardon my daughter. Sir, the tiny girl sniffled over the loss of her triple scoop ice cream cone. Sorry about that, Smoker apologized to the tiny girl, placing several berry money in her small hands. Go grab yourself a 5-scoop cone on me, the burly Marine said as he walked away with the ensign. The father nodded, while the small daughter smiled and waved enthusiastically at the receding Smoker, who just lifted his hand in a backward gesture and turned the corner. Nami, how's this? Nami said as she pushed back the changing room curtain, revealing a dress that looked quite similar to a certain archipelago, who sneezed. It fits you well, miss, exclaimed the shopkeeper, and Nami nodded before shutting the curtain and putting on a new dress, then pulling it out again a few seconds later. Nami, who was now dressed in a long crimson dress with a fur stole around her neck and a large slit up the side that ran all the way to her upper thigh to show off her legs, questioned, And this? How exquisite you look, miss, said the shopkeeper with a grin. Nami hummed in delight before going through several more dresses. The shopkeeper kept complimenting her choice of dresses. So, would you be purchasing all of them, miss? Inquired the shopkeeper, who was obviously shivering with excitement, his hair fashioned to seem like a coat hanger of all things. Nope, just this one, Nami exclaimed as she set her selection on the counter next to the mountain of garments she'd tried on. Please come again, the shopkeeper said, his eyes welling up with crocodile tears. Nami waved over her shoulder as she walked out of the boutique, but she was pleased with her outfit. Welcome, said the female shopkeeper as Nami entered the store. The temperature and pressure suddenly altered. Is it going to rain? It definitely seems like it. I wonder how much longer I can shop. Nami wondered out loud, deciding to find Nijiko. Zoro, seems like that monster ain't with you today, yelled a loud male voice, drawing Zoro's attention across the street, where 2 enormous men faced down a young lady with swords drawn. It's because of you guys that our boss was locked up, said another loud male voice. If you two still haven't learned your lesson, the lady answered, I'll happily be your opponent. You teach us a lesson in sword fighting. Let's show her how a real swordman fights, said one of them, grinning down at the girl who surprisingly didn't show a hint of fear on her face. She was almost smirking. Well, why not? We will come for your captain next, the 2 men screamed at the lady as they swung their swords at her. Both large men were slashed across the torsos in an instant, and the young woman then proceeded to lose her footing and trip on the final step of her movement. The people who had gathered to watch the show started laughing at how clunky she was. Well, this is a surprise, Zoro said as he picked up the woman's glasses and handed them to the swordswoman. These are yours, right? Zoro gave the lady her glasses. Sorry for bothering you, the lady apologized as she grabbed his glasses from him. Thank you very much. When she glanced up, Zoro's body jolted. He was staring into the face of Kuina, who looked almost identical to his lost comrade. Kuina, Zoro murmured under his breath, but he remembered this one wasn't her, she was dead. Deciding to leave immediately, he stood up. Watch your footing next time, you were lucky, but the next time you might not be, Zoro told her as he was walking away, not looking at the lady who looked like Kuina. The lady blushed slightly, listening to his advice. After standing up, she was about to say something, only now noticing that he was gone. Who was he? Luffy. This is where the Pirate King died, Luffy grumbled as he stared at the thing. He felt a chill down his spine. This is also where the Age of Pirates began, the captain of Straw Hat Pirates said. Zoro, who the hell was she, and why did she look like Kuina? Zoro breathed, recalling the swordswoman and deciding to just ignore it for now. The swordsman started asking people for directions to a sword shop, all of them pointing towards his right. Zoro listened to them, and soon he reached the end, only to notice that he was at the docks on the other side of the island. What the hell? Lying bags, he thought with clenched teeth before turning around. Running around, trying to find a shop only to end up in the same exact place? Later, after searching around without knowing where he was going, Zoro finally found a SHTHE shopkeeper, A balding guy with black hair sticking out on both sides who rubbed his hands together and beamed a salesman's smile. "Please feel free to explore around as much as you like." Zoro told the merchant, "I want to purchase several swords." "Of course, sir," the store owner exclaimed, "we've got antique swords, modern swords, and even esoteric swords, all at affordable rates and backed by a 200-year sterling reputation." "Great." Zoro sighed, knowing the shopper was boasting. "Wait, is that?" the store owner said as he saw Zoro's sword on his hip. Could it be?" he inquired. "Young guy, might I possibly see that sword you've got there?" the shopkeeper asked with an innocent grin on his face. Zoro narrowed his eyes slightly before shrugging his shoulder. If he tried anything, he would cut him down. "I suppose," Zoro shrugged as he slid Watto onto the counter. "Calm down. This could be a tremendous chance. He may not even know what he has," thought the shopkeeper as he unsheathed the sword and examined it for a while. A fine blade. The workmanship is noteworthy, to say the least." "Ippon Matsu," the shopkeeper said, smiling. "If you're interested in selling this sword, I would gladly buy it for 500k berry," the shopkeeper said while rubbing his hands in excitement. "Wado Ichimonji belonged to my late friend, and I inherited it along with our shared dream," Zoro said coldly, and Ippon trembled reflexively. "I will never part with this sword." "Yes, of course, sir," Ippon nodded in understanding. "Is that it?" exclaimed a female voice that resembled Kuina and smashed against the counter in her haste to be near to the legendary sword. "That's Wado Ichimonji, the straight road of peace. It's amazing." "Why the fuck is she here?" Zoro screamed in his head as he saw the lady for the second time so fast. The swordswoman exclaimed, "Wado Ichimonji is one of the 21 grade swords." "It doesn't matter," Zoro said as he returned Wado to his hip and sheathed it. "This sword is more essential to me than its grade or worth." "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize," the swordswoman said, bowing slightly. "Wait, I remember you. We just met on the street a few minutes ago. Thank you for finding my glasses. My name is Tashigi." "It's all right. I'm just trying to get some swords," Zoro said, careful not to reveal his identity. "I'd like to if possible." "Of course, feel free to look at our collection of blades. The blunt old swords are in the barrels along one wall. The new swords are on the racks against the other wall. And the highest quality swords are on their own racks on the wall next to me," Ippon explained. "And you, woman, you're here to pick up your shigure, correct?" the shopkeeper asked. Tashigi noticed that the swordsman was using 3 swords, which immediately reminded her of a certain bounty hunter. "Hey, you use 3 sword style, right? You remind me of a bounty hunter," Tashigi said. Zoro's posture didn't change from her words. "A specific bounty hunter?" Zoro said as he was looking at a blade from the barrel with good swords, but he didn't try and look at her. "Yes, Roronoa Zoro. Do you know who he is?" "I've heard that name a lot," Zoro said before deciding to leave the sword where it was. "It seems all the most famous blades are in the hands of pirates and bounty hunters these days. It's such a shame. Those swords must be crying while being used for evil." Tashigi shook her head. "Everyone has their own circumstances. You can't brand everyone bad simply because they do something different than you," Zoro said as he stared at Tashigi. "Pirates are bad, is as simple as that," Tashigi said. "Oh really, you can't just use a paint to paint pirates with one color and the marines with another. I for one heard of an incident in Shell's town. A brat used his wolf to terrorize people around the town, sometimes even allowing the wolf to bite some," Zoro said before stopping, allowing Tashigi to understand what he was saying. "The marines stopped him, right? No, you see, he was the son of the town's captain. Therefore he thought he could do everything he wanted," he said, checking the swords. Before Tashigi could say anything, his father was even worse. He ordered his own men to kill a little girl. He ordered his men to kill themselves. Zoro finished with disgust at the end. Tashigi stood silent at his words, and so did the shopkeeper, who actually was terrified. Eventually, the swordswoman found her voice. "I'm sorry, maybe you're right, but still, I want to free all the legendary swords from evil hands." Tashigi spoke with passion in her voice. "Does that imply you want to steal Wado Ichimonji from me?" Zoro said, his hand on the Ichimonji. Tashigi lifted her hands in front of her to deflect the charge. No, I don't want the swords for myself. I simply don't want them to be used for evil. Zoro's eyes darted to the sword he just touched. Something about it seemed unique. He drew the blade from the barrel and examined it, unsheathing it and inspecting the flame-like Hammond design. This sword was different. It was unique. "Oh, that sword! I've seen it in my book," Tashigi shouted, pulling a large book from her back pocket and flipping through the pages. "I was correct. That's Sandai Kitetsu. It's a grade sword, exactly like mine, Shigur." Ippon shook his head and said, "I can't sell that weapon." "But why not?" Tashigi said, plainly perplexed. "It's cursed," Zoro said, raising the sword. "So you're aware of it?" Ippon said, anxiously glancing at the blade. "No, I can simply tell," Zoro said, focused on the blade in his hands. "Well, you're correct," Ippon nodded, perspiration beading on his brow. "The Kitetsu are all wonderful swords, but they've borne a curse from the beginning with the Shodai Kitetsu. Many a renowned swordsman met their death after wielding one of the 3 Kitetsu. Nowadays, no swordsman would touch one of them." "I like it, so how much was it again?" 100,000, right?" Zoro grinned, his sword raised in the air. Ippon yelled at the green-haired swordsman, "You idiot! I said I couldn't sell that sword. If you died, it'd be like I murdered you myself." "Let's put it to the test," Zoro said, grinning at the sword. "Which is stronger, my luck or this sword's curse?" he said, tossing the blade into the air and holding his arm straight out to his side. The Sandai Kitetsu swirled down, aiming for Zoro's arm. Ippon cautioned, "You idiot, you'll lose your arm. That sword's edge is unsurpassed." Tashigi worriedly covered her lips with her hands while Zoro merely closed his eyes and waited. The surprised and scared Ippon and Tashigi watched as the cursed blade whirled downwards, neatly circling Zoro's arm just as it seemed he would lose it. The two witnessed the grade sword pierce clean through the hardwood floor all the way to the hilt. "I'll take it," Zoro grinned maniacally as Tashigi and Ippon slumped in shock at what they'd just seen. "Hang on, just wait right there," Ippon yelled from the back of his shop, emerging with a sword on its own stand. "This is Yubashiri, one of the 50 skillful grade swords. I can personally attest to its sharpness. My shop may be small, but this is the best sword you'll find in Loguetown. I guarantee it." Zoro took up the sword, noting its lightness, and unsheathed it to display a stunning blade, with a perfect wave on the hamon and a razor-sharp edge. He sheathed the sword with a smile. Zoro inquired to Ippon, "How much?" "Don't worry about the money," Ippon said as he walked away. "It's been a long time since I've seen a true swordsman. I'll pray for your good fortune." Zoro didn't seem pleased. "I asked how much it costs. It is not honorable to not pay." The shopkeeper's eyes widened slightly. He was clearly stunned from his words before he broke from his stunned situation. "Oh, all right, it costs 2 million, he said after calculating the price. Zoro grinned, pulling out the money from his pocket and handing it to the shopkeeper, who's it. Zoro left the shop quietly. The shopkeeper put the money in the bag. When Ippon returned, he noticed Tashigi still standing there. "You can go now, we're closed for the rest of the day." Ippon shooed Tashigi out of his business and turned the sign to "closed." "Luffy, wow. So this is what the Pirate King saw when he died," cried Luffy as he stood on top of the execution platform, gazing out over the busy square and seeing all the people, many of whom were staring and pointing at him with interest. "Hey, you, get down from there." "Why?" Luffy asked before letting out a laugh. The officer shouted at him again, "Because that execution platform belongs to the world government, so get off it." He was then beaten over the skull with a big, spiked iron mace and left splayed out on the ground. Now, no need to be so tense, policeman," a woman in a cloak with stylized hearts said, her head topped with a white cowboy hat with a large, decorative plume feather on the left side. Civilians were alarmed to see a police officer brutalized so casually. "I've been looking for you, Luffy. It's been a long time." Luffy tilted his head to the side. He knew he wasn't the best at remembering faces, but he knew he had never seen this face. Knowing he wouldn't be able to recognize her, he used observation haki. "Are you sure you haven't forgotten my face?" the woman said. "You've changed on the outside, but you're as rotten on the inside as you've always been, Alvida," Luffy said, looking down at the female pirate. "You remember," Alvida said, grinning. I still remembered how you hit me, she said seductively while touching her face. The people who had gathered started yelling at Luffy for harming such a beautiful woman. You hit me hard, and I loved that, she said, sending a wink towards Luffy, who wasn't seduced, the opposite, he looked bored. I want you to be mine, Luffy. No, Luffy responded swiftly, and every guy in the square frowned in disbelief. Some calling him stupid. Ooh, so callous and harsh. Alvida laughed as she pulled off her cloak, exposing her new thin form in striped capris, a white bikini top, and a purple jacket. After I ate the soup no mi. My body changed. You undoubtedly noticed my freckles are gone, she said. Luffy rolled his eyes. Yeah. I realized a lot more than that was gone. An explosion ripped through the square, smashing the neighboring fountain and sending a massive chunk of masonry flying towards Alvida. The enormous chunk of marble seemed to strike the lady, but the large fountain piece seemed to just slide off her and crash into a nearby building the next second. Well, don't you think it was a little dangerous? Alvida questioned a group of veiled guys. The lead guy said, with your devil fruit, no assault can injure your skin, so don't worry. Luffy, Alvida said, addressing the straw-hatted young guy. If you're really suited to be my man, you won't lose against him. We paired up simply to find you. I've dreamt solely of murdering you since the day I was blown away, yelled the leader as he and his crew took off their cloaks and unveiled themselves to the enormous square. Dozens of residents screamed in despair as the buggy pirates drew out guns and leveled them at them. Luffy expected someone more dangerous, but the moment his eyes saw who the leader was. Oh, it's just Buggy. Buggy clenched his teeth in anger. The Straw Hat was pretending as if he was nothing compared to him. Buggy shouted at Luffy with sharp fangs, I see you're still the same cocky brat as before. Luffy didn't need his observation to avoid an attack from behind. His eyes saw that it was the circus swordman that Zoro defeated. How? He shouted in anger, but Luffy was getting bored of this. He turned his arm dark before punching him in the head, cracking his skull, sending him flying down before smashing against the concrete, sending debris everywhere. Kabaji, you loser, how could you fail? Buggy screamed in anger towards his nakama, who wasn't moving anymore. Such a strong man, Alvida said while licking her lips. You straw hat bastard, you will pay for this, Buggy threatened, only for him to stop dead on track. He felt sweat rolling down his face. Luffy's eyes were looking at him as if a monster was there instead. I spared you once because you used to be a friend of Shanks. This caused many who were inside the earshot to gasp. Even Smoker was quite surprised by this piece of information. But instead of learning your lesson, you choose to shoot yourself in the foot and come here to face me. Luffy said, the straw hat hiding his eyes. The captain raised his hand engulfed in lightning. But by coming here and deciding to execute me, you didn't shoot yourself. This is the equivalent of cutting your own head, Luffy stated darkly. Buggy felt completely frozen in place. He wanted to move, and yet his legs just weren't answering to him. Why can't I move? He screamed in his head, knowing this could be his end. As Luffy prepared to strike him down, his attention was brought to his nakama approaching the place. With Tashigi and Smoker was looking at the Straw Hat captain. He had to admit the kid could look menacing when he wanted. So that's Straw Hat, Luffy, the guy with the greatest bounty in all of East Blue? We have the plaza ringed as directed, and we may go in at any moment. We thought to let the pirates deal with each other, but it seems Straw Hat Luffy is far stronger than them, Tashigi explained, not wanting to admit that she was quite intimidated by the captain. Wait for my signal, then go in, Smoker told the soldier, don't try to fight the Straw Hat. I'll take care of Straw Hat personally. Yes, sir, said the sailor, who walked away, telling the instructions to the other marines. The crew Nami and Nijiko, who had several white bags in their arms, stared as they saw their nakama, which had a huge bag on her back with all of her apparel purchases inside. Usopp greeted them but still holding the fish in his hands. Sanji was looking down in despair before his eyes saw that Nami and Nijiko had returned. Nami Swan, Nijiko-san, said Sanji, delighted to see the Orangeette Navigator and the Blue Healer once again. Hello there, Zoro inquired. His crewmates seeing their swordsman had 3 swords once again. We need to hurry to the ship, Nami said. The air pressure has fallen significantly, almost too quickly, to be honest. These black clouds are merely the beginning of a massive storm. That's not good, Usopp cried, only to be interrupted by a rumbling of thunder. Really not good. Then we'll have to go back to the ship, Sanji agreed. Zoro said, where is Luffy? Has anybody seen him? Nami said, he stated he was going to view the execution platform, which is in the main square. Isn't the main plaza just over there? Sanji said, pointing to a big mass of people. The crew dashed to the edge of the crowd and found Luffy standing on the execution platform, the buggy pirates all glaring him down and pointing their flintlocks at him. How come he's on the platform? Usopp said, his eyes bulging. Approaching closer, several buggy pirates tried to stop them. Zoro pulled out his swords and started cutting them one by one. Sanji started kicking. Nami turned her arms gold. Her arms grew and turned like wings with scales, before jumping up in the air sending a wave of wind causing many to fly away from the strength of the wind. Knowing she couldn't fly yet but only slowing the fall. Luffy, we have to leave, Nami shouted, knowing she was closer than the others. Luffy immediately noticed her golden form. He grinned before deciding to end this party. Smoker's eyes widened at the girl's strength with her devil fruit. Why wasn't I informed of this? He screamed at his soldiers. We don't know, sir, the soldier defended himself immediately as he took several steps away from the angry captain. Smoker knew it was trouble enough to deal with one devil fruit user, but having two could be a pain in the ass. He TL with them when another marine ran screaming at his position. The marine informed him that the rest of the Straw Hats had arrived while pointing in their direction. I'm not blind, Smoker shouted at him, annoyed, while Tashigi recognized someone amongst the crowd. Roronoa Zoro, Luffy. Alright. Luffy yelled back to Nami, taking a big breath before bellowing, I'm the man who will be the king of the pirates. Luffy declared right where the previous pirate king had died. Almost everyone couldn't believe their eyes. That grin. The marine captain trailed off as his thoughts returned to that day. The day he'd watched the pirate king's execution. The man who had laughed at the face of death. The same smile that Luffy was wearing right now. Time to go. Luffy grinned before sending a wave of Conqueror's Haki. Everyone ordinary around the plaza dropped down like rocks from the strength of his Haki. Buggy and his pirates, including Alvida, dropped to the ground, not moving. Zoro smirked seeing the power of his captain. Sanji was impressed by the power despite not being the first time. Negico was quite surprised but still was able to handle the wave of Conqueror's Haki. Usopp was breathing heavily, but otherwise, everything else was okay. To the Grand Line, Luffy said, laughing, Smoker. The Captain Marine felt his head spinning like a roller coaster before standing up and shouting, what the fuck was that? Tashigi's head was trembling, desperately trying to catch her breath, and her knees wouldn't stop trembling as she blurted out, I'm not sure. Sir, the majority of our F-forces are asleep, said one of the few awake Marines. I'm going after the Straw Hat Pirates, Tashigi, wake them up, he ordered before chasing after the pirates. He had captured every pirate that had tried to go to the Grand Line, he would not fail this. While he ran towards the Straw Hats, a black figure with red marks on the left side of his face suddenly grinned. It seems you have grown up. My son, we need to sail now. Nami shouted at her crew as they were running toward the ship. She didn't need to be a navigator to understand that a storm was coming, despite finding it weird that it almost felt that it came out of nowhere. While Nami was thinking of the weather, Luffy was thinking about something else. Closing his eyes, he spread his observation haki as far as possible. He could feel someone coming in another voice nearby, but what caught his attention was the third voice, but Luffy couldn't tell how strong this one was before suddenly disappeared from his observation haki. Luffy's eyes widened. The voice is gone. How is that possible, or did the voice die? They turned around the corner only to see a woman standing against the wall, breathing heavily. They immediately recognized her marine outfit. Before Luffy could ask the woman to move away, her head raised, her eyes found her target, glaring daggers at a certain swordsman. Who is this beauty? Sanji asked, his eyes filled with hearts while drooling like a dog. The girl ignored the freak before pointing her sword at Zoro. Of all people, Luffy noticed she was alone, not sure if that was brave of her or foolishnesses or both. You will pay for what you did to me, Roronoa Zoro? She declared with a dangerous tone, glaring daggers at Zoro, who just brushed off her threats with a shrug of his shoulders. Sanji was enraged. ready to kick the swordsman for harming such a beautiful woman. Usopp saw that coming from a mile away. "What did you do, shithead?" Sanji shouted while being held by Usopp, who was wondering why exactly these two just couldn't stop fighting. Zoro didn't pay him any attention. Instead, he just quirked an eyebrow at the girl in front of the pirate crew. "What are you talking about? I didn't do anything to you," Zoro replied, getting bored of this girl who looked to be able to pop out of nowhere just to annoy him. Before Tashigi could say anything, Luffy took a step forward. "OJ Zoro. Who is she? Is she your girlfriend?" Luffy asked with a teasing tone. This caused the whole crew to snicker, except Zoro, who looked pale, and Sanji, who was crying tears of despair. Both sword users turned red like a tomato before glaring at the pirate captain. He is not my girlfriend, boyfriend," they both shouted in embarrassment. Nezuko burst out laughing. Nami tried to keep on herself while Usopp was trying to help Sanji to stand up. "Shuri," Luffy whispered with a small whistle that only annoyed Zoro even more. "I'm here to defeat you, Roronoa Zoro. Let's fight," the girl declared before unsheathing her sword. Zoro turned towards the girl before unsheathing only one of his swords. The crew immediately understood that he either wasn't taking her seriously or she wasn't that strong yet. "Defeat the shithead," Sanji shouted with hearts in his eyes, earning a facepalm from Usopp. Tashigi rushed towards Zoro, but with a single move of his sword, the swordswoman was against the wall, her sword was on the ground, and Zoro was pointing his sword towards her neck. She clenched her teeth but didn't close her eyes. She was a swordswoman, she couldn't show fear towards death. She expected the finishing blow to come, but instead, Zoro just put his sword back to its scabbard before turning around, walking towards his crew. "What? Finish this. Why are you not killing me?" she demanded in anger. This was humiliating. Nami seriously wondered if the girl had some kind of death wish. It was one thing to challenge a swordsman who is clearly far stronger than you but then demands to be killed. "No, return to me when you're stronger. Only then will we have a rematch," Zoro declared, looking at her. Tashigi's eyes widened at his words. She wasn't sure what to say. Was she supposed to shout or feel grateful? But before the swordswoman could say anything, Luffy decided to end this. "OJ Zoro, as much as I'm enjoying this lovely date of yours, we need to return back to going merry," Luffy said with a smirk, clearly enjoying this. Zoro murmured something under his breath before leaving with his captain. Almost reaching the docks, Usopp was the first to see going merry. A wide smile spread around his face. "There it is," he shouted, but before they could reach it, white smoke suddenly formed around them. It was thick enough they couldn't even see beyond it, but before anything else could happen, Luffy turned around before punching a certain marine captain in the chest, sending him crashing against concrete. The smoke around them disappeared. Zoro was about to use his swords. Sanji prepared to fight when Luffy spread out his arm for them to stand behind him. "No, everyone, return back to the ship," Luffy ordered with a firm tone, clearly showing he wasn't messing around. His voice lost all the goofing he usually had. The others nodded immediately before rushing back to the ship. The marine captain stood up from the rubble, glaring at the pirate captain but at the same time confused as hell. "Hockey? How is it possible in East Blue?" he wondered, his fist turned to smoke. "How can you use hockey?" Smoker demanded, glaring at the captain, who didn't show that he was intimidated in the slightest. Actually, he looked uncaring. "You are a Logia user, that's rare in East Blue. As for how I know hockey, well, a pirate should not reveal his secrets," Luffy stated, the smirk not leaving his face. Smoker rushed towards the Straw Hat captain. His body turned to smoke. The smoke spread everywhere around Luffy, trying to confuse him. Luffy couldn't see anything but the smoke around him, but he really didn't need to. The marine captain suddenly showed up behind Luffy ready to strike when Luffy suddenly turned around at last second, punching him again, sending him away. The debris flew everywhere. The front door of a shop and a part of the wall was destroyed. Luffy expected him to stand down, but Smoker slowly stood up again, blood leaking from his mouth, his nose bleeding but still refusing to stand down. "What is your name?" Luffy asked, impressed by his courage. "My name is Smoker. My name is Monkey D. Luffy. I'm sure we will see each other again," Luffy stated before sending a wave of Conqueror's haki, far stronger than the one at the execution platform. Smoker suddenly felt dizzy again. A weight held him down, falling to his knees. Smoker felt everything going dark. Later Smoker opened his eyes slowly. Everything seemed blurry. His ears heard different voices shouting close to him. He was having a bad headache, and the loud voice in his ears was only making it worse. "Shut up," he roared. The soldiers immediately went silent except Tashigi, who looked relieved. "How are you, Captain Smoker?" Tashigi screamed. The captain stood up from the hole he had formed. "Peachy," he answered with a humorless chuckle as he stood up on his legs. The pirate captain had spared him. That was unusual. Smoker wanted to kick himself. He had seen nothing. At the very least, he should have been able to see it coming, but he had seen nothing, only his body slamming against the concrete, but he wasn't going to let them leave. He was Captain Smoker of the Marine. "Persist in your pursuit. They're not leaving this island." "Yes, sir." Luffy was rushing towards his ship. He suddenly felt a new voice close to him. Turning to face the new voice, Luffy's eyes widened. "How did he sneak up on me? And who is he?" Luffy asked himself. He couldn't help but notice how strong this one was. He felt the same level of power as his grandpa. Luffy knew if this person wanted to harm him, he had no way of winning, but he then noticed that this voice felt familiar. "Can you tell me who you are?" Luffy questioned the tall guy with the green cloak. His cowl obscured the man's face, but a burst of lights showed a craggy face with a tattoo on his left side. The tattoo, which looked tribal, ran from the man's chin to his forehead. "Pirate King, huh?" As they exchanged glances, the guy laughed. "It's okay with me. If you've made up your mind, then go." "What are you talking about?" Helping his guard up. Another lightning struck the sea, and a flash from the lightning illuminated his face again. This time, Luffy was able to see his whole face. Luffy's eyes slightly widened. He remembered his grandfather had once talked to him, Ace, and Sabo about the most dangerous people alive in the world right now. He had shown posters of Whitebeard, Kaido, and a few others that weren't even pirates. One of the posters had the face in front of him. "You have a journey in front of you, so I'm going to be quick," the man stated before he started talking. "What?" Narrowing his eyes dangerously, the Straw Hat could hardly comprehend what the man just said after he proceeded with it, but before Luffy could demand what the man was talking about. "You need to leave. We will eventually meet. Our journey will lead to the same island." Luffy felt new voices coming toward them. When the cloaked guy heard the Marines closing upon him, he stood between Luffy and them. Luffy knew he needed to return to his crew. Therefore, he ran towards the ship without looking behind. "Why are you here?" Smoker demanded, recognizing the man standing in front of them. "Why are you helping the Straw Hat?" When Smoker was ignored, he almost bit down his cigarette. He yanked the huge jeet from his back, already losing his temper with this man. "Answer me, Dragon." Smoker pointed his weapon, knowing he was no match for a guy like him. Hearing gasps from behind, but Smoker didn't pay them attention. Dragon extended his arms out to his sides instead of responding. The wind suddenly stopped, but Dragon kept smiling. Then it started up again, this time with a distinctly green hue, and blew like a storm across the island. The Marines were blown away like ants in strong wind. Many of them flew before slamming into the ground or stores. Smoker braced himself against the wind as much as he could. The wind blew into Loguetown like a tornado. Luffy the captain reached going merry before any of his crew could greet him. "We need to leave now," Luffy ordered. They all nodded before preparing the ship to sail away. As the ship was leaving the docks, a wind blew in their direction, helping the ship to take speed. Luffy stood at the back of the ship, Loguetown slowly disappearing in the horizon. But the Straw Hat captain had many questions in his head. What the hell did he mean by that? Smoker kept trying to hold himself together. The wind was strong that made every marine around him fly away, his arm in front of his face, trying to open his eyes when the wind suddenly stopped. What the hell? Smoker stood up, breathing heavily, finally being able to see, but Dragon was nowhere in sight. Smoker wasn't sure if that was for better or worse. Why is a person like him in Loguetown of all places? Smoker asked himself. His head was spinning with multiple questions, but with no answers. He knew the man must have some kind of connection with the Straw Hat. Before Smoker could think of a possible answer, he heard footsteps rushing towards his position. Turning around, his eyes saw Tashigi leading several Marines. Deciding to think later about it, Smoker turned to his soldiers. "We need to chase the Straw Hat," Smoker ordered, but it seemed it was already too late. "Captain Smoker, we just saw the ship sailing away. We can't follow them in this storm," Tashigi reported. After the wind had died down, a few soldiers had reported to Tashigi that the pirate ship had sailed away. "What shall we do, Captain?" Tashigi was waiting for instructions. At that moment, Smoker decided that his holiday in Loguetown was over. It seemed he needed to chase the Straw Hats himself. Smoker ordered them to return to the base and every pirate to be arrested. Arriving back at the base, Smoker wasted no time calling the Marine. It was time to leave. Going merry, the storm was still very much causing for the Straw Hats. Nami gave orders to everyone. Despite the waves crashing against the ship, despite the rain, Nami was not going to let Going Merry to sink, not on her watch. Eventually, the storm died down, the rain stopped, and the water calmed down. Nami breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally over, and now the whole crew looked forward, eager to see where their journey would lead them. Grand Line. Seeing the danger was over, for now, Luffy decided to sort of celebrate the beginning of their journey. Grabbing an empty barrel. "What are you doing, Luffy?" Usopp inquired as he saw Luffy. "I believe we should have a ceremony to commemorate the event." With a smile, Luffy answered. "All right, let's do it." Nami flashed a dazzling smile. "I'm going to the Grand Line in search of the All Blue." As he positioned his heel on top of the barrel, Sanji stated. "The greatest swordsman in the world." As his heel was on top of the barrel, Zoro stated. "I'm going to draw the map of the world." Nami grinned as she put her heel at the top of the barrel. "I'm going to become the greatest female pirate in the world," Nezuko stated, grinning at her sister. "To become a brave warrior of the sea." As he placed his heel on the barrel, Usopp exclaimed. "I'm going to be the Pirate King," Luffy stated with a grin. "To the Grand Line." The crew shouted in union. The 6 members of the crew all elevated their legs and lowered their heels at the same time. The barrel fell, and the whole crew laughed together. Later, Luffy. It had been just 6 hours since they had left Loguetown, and the storm had yet to subside. Zoro was on watch. Everyone else was asleep, save for Luffy, who was a few feet away from the fridge, Nami, who was writing something in the galley, and Nezuko, who had come to get a drink before bed. "What is it, Nami?" A quiet moment passed between the two of them before Nami rose from the table and made her way over to her captain. Before he could ask what was up once more, the Orangeette pulled Luffy close to herself and sealed their lips together in a searing and deep kiss that conveyed so much emotion that neither of them realized that a full 2 minutes had passed before they broke apart. "And Nami? Don't ever do something like that. Okay, you idiot. I don't know what I'd do if I ever lost you." "But you didn't," he replied with an innocent tilt of his head. "You're not only the crew's keystone, you're our rock, Luffy," Nami whispered as she hugged her lover from behind. "You can't leave us alone in this world. Promise me that, Luffy," the Orangeette sniffed as she gripped him closer. "It's a promise, Nami," Luffy pledged as he stood there and threaded his hand together with Nami's before kissing her on the lips. "Smoker, gahahahaha." Garp laughed as he held the speaker for his Den Den Mushi in his hand. He had connected with Captain Smoker, who was currently pursuing his grandson and his crew. The lower-ranking Marine had spoken with him at length about what had happened in Loguetown, including his confrontation with Luffy and Dragon. "So, my no-good son saw my no-good grandson off, eh? Son? Dragon the Revolutionary is your son?" Smoker roared into his Den Den Mushi, the one on Garp's end mimicking the facial expression of the shocked captain. "Luffy's father is the most wanted man in the world," Kobe cried out from his spot at the door. "Holy shit!" Helmeppo gasped as he froze in shock. Did I just say that? Oh, well, forget about that please, I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about that." "Then don't say it in the first place," Smoker, Kobe and Helmeppo shouted as one. "Anyway, Captain Smoker, it's futile to chase them up the Red Line entrance to the Grand Line. There are too many islands they could potentially head towards on the first leg of their journey down the Paradise. Do you have any suggestions then, Vice Admiral? Alabasta is a good place to lie in wait." "Why there? I don't trust that Shichibukai, crocodile." A growl passed through the Den Den Mushi. "I don't need a pirate to help me catch another pirate." "Just call it a hunch, Captain Smoker." "Yes sir," Smoker muttered as he ordered his men to requisition from Marine HQ for Alabasta. "What about you, sir?" Fate will allow me to meet my no-good pirate of a grandson once more. I'm not too worried about abandoning the chase for now." Garp grinned as he leaned back and looked over his shoulder at the two seaman recruits standing at attention. "Besides, it's time that I start training my two new protégés seriously." "So Marineford then? Well, I wish you luck, sir." The Den Mushi then fell asleep, indicating that the transmission was cut. "Geez, doesn't that kid know that the superior officer is the one who hangs up?" Garp asked rhetorically as he placed his speaker back on the shell of his Den Mushi. "Not that I care about rank anyway. Gahahaha. Helmeppo? Yeah, Kobe? It was nice knowing you, even if you act like a spoiled brat." "Nice knowing you too, crybaby." While Kobe was talking with his friend, Garp knew he wasn't exactly going to Marineford, at least not right now. It was time for him to meet someone. It had been years, after all. "Going merry, Nami? Why'd the light go out?" Luffy questioned while hanging upside from the Going Merry's figurehead by his feet. "The shifts must be switching," Nijiko mused as she locked their heading for the time being as instructed by their navigator. "If I weren't here, this would be the most inappropriate time for this to happen," Nami muttered under her raincoat. "Luckily, you have the best navigator in the world as a crewmate, Luffy." "That's our Nami," her captain praised as he pulled himself up. "More importantly, though, could you please get off of there? It's dangerous." She, I'm fine. I'm fine," Nami grumbled some rather colorful and descriptive words about her lover before turning back to the laminated sea chart in her hands. "But what's really troubling right now is what lies ahead of us. I can't believe the rumors are true." "Rumors? What rumors?" Luffy questioned with a tilt of his head. Without even giving heed to his words, the Orangeette beckoned her fellow Straw Hats to meet in the galley with the rest of the crew who were preparing for lunch. Once everyone was seated in the galley, the navigator stated what rumor she was talking about. "The entrance to the Grand Line is a mountain." "Well, yeah. How do you think pirates got to the Grand Line?" "Through the Calm Belt," Luffy asked while picking his nose with his pinky finger. "It's called Reverse Mountain, and it has 5 rivers leading going through it, one for each of the blues and one for the paradise of the Grand Line. The currents switch around for 2 days out of the week, flowing down instead of up." "There you go again with paradise," Usopp muttered as he chomped on a piece of chicken leg. "Why are you calling it paradise if those of us who are former Krieg pirates know it as the pirate graveyard?" "That's the name for it for those who were defeated by the first half of the Grand Line," Luffy snickered as he flickered the booger on his finger into the nearby trash can. "For those who finish it, the second portion, the New World, is a million times more terrifying. Thus, those who run away from the New World call the first portion paradise." A shiver ran up every single one of the Straw Hat Pirates. Usopp's cold shudder was worse, as he could barely fathom what horrors awaited in the New World that made the first half seem like paradise. "You said for pirates anyway, what about the Marines and civilians?" "Generally speaking, most people never leave their home sea unless becoming a merchant, a pirate, a marine, or they're of nobility. The thing about marine ships and ships used by nobles is that the bottoms of the hulls are lined with kairoseki, which essentially wards off sea kings, so paddles are usable in the Calm Belt," their captain explained as he tore into a piece of mutton. "What's kairoseki?" Nami asked. "It's a weird stone imbued with the powers of the seas themselves. Anyone with Akuma no Mi powers who touches the stones feel their strength begin to drain as if they were submerged in water." Nami's eyes widened when she heard that. "Well, nothing to worry about, she. Luffy suddenly stopped his boisterous laughter when he felt that the unstable waters that had been with them for the last day had suddenly stopped for no apparent reason. "Luffy? What's wrong?" Nami asked. "We're not rocking anymore." "Finally, I was getting sick of the swaying to and from in my hammock," Zoro muttered. "Yeah, Luffy's right. It's no longer stormy outside," Usopp shouted as he opened his own of the galley's portholes and stuck his head out, some water clinging to the seal dripping down onto his long nose. "This can't be right. We should have been blown to the entrance of Reverse Mountain by that storm," Nami muttered to herself as she checked over the map. She stepped outside with the 5 other Straw Hat Pirates. "That's weird. It's like there's some kind of barrier between us that's keeping the storm away from us," Nami said. "That's because of the Calm Belt. There is literally no wind out here for some mysterious reason that not even the R Division of the Marines can answer." Luffy's eyes hardened though. We need to get back into the storm on the double. Why do we need to do that? Usopp asked, and Zoro nodding their heads in agreement. Like I said before, marine and noble ships are coated with kairoseki to fool sea kings while traversing the calm belt using oars. Luffy said as his eyes peered off into the horizon. Something had not felt right when the Going Merry entered the calm belt. Bearer of the blessings of the seas. Did you guys hear that? Luffy grumbled as his eyes scanned about. Hear what, Captain? Nijiko asked from her spot, now on full alert. Inheritor of the will of D. There it is again. What's wrong, Luffy? Zoro questioned as he hoisted 3 paddles from the main deck to the port and starboard rails. He who shall shake the very foundations of this world. Who's speaking? Luffy, you're scaring me. Nami whispered as she looked on in horror as her lover seemed to slowly go insane. We have been waiting for you for over 800 years. Show yourself. Luffy, be quiet, didn't you say there were sea kings out here? Usopp hissed as he did a shushing motion. Do you want them to hear us, Luffy-kun? Nijiko asked. A promise made long ago shall be fulfilled by your hands. What promise? Nijiko, what should we do? Sanji asked, looking at the doctor of the ship. Receive our blessings that will guide you, child. Why do I want a blessing? Luffy, please, you're freaking everyone out, Nijiko said as she grabbed Luffy by the shoulders and shook him slightly before slapping him twice, attempting to break him out of his funk. That seemed to have done the trick as Luffy was broken from his delirium, his eyes blinking owlishly back at the helmswoman. Now tell us what's going on, you're worrying all of us. I'm hearing voices. The blessing of the emperors of the seas. Blessing of the emperors of the seas. Soon the voice stopped. Luffy breathed a sigh of relief. The whole crew was looking at him with concern. The Straw Hats were soon looking up at the gigantic mountain that was in front of them. They were astounded to see that the current did indeed go straight up the mountain's face. The difficult ascent up the mountain was adorned with archways. They then saw that they were moving at a rapid pace and were going right towards the door. Everyone get a grip of anything, Luffy yelled, and the others grabbed anything they could. And before long, the gang was soaring up Reverse Mountain. They could only stand there and watch the arches whiz by at unbelievable speeds. Everyone was clinging to the bars with their lives in their hands. They were soon at the summit, soaring through the air for a brief time before the spacecraft collided with the mountain and was hurled back down. Except for Luffy, who was presently laughing wildly, the crew was deafeningly quiet. The remainder of the passengers were nervous as they AWA rightening voyage, which they hoped would not be due to the ship colliding with the rocks. They saw a heavy fog blocking their vision of the mountain's foot as they rode the current down the mountain. However, through the mist, a bizarre enormous bulk could be seen. The Straw Hats were then startled by a deafeningly low howl. What the fuck is that? Nami shouted in fear. As they rushed down the mountain, the Straw Hats started to fear. At this moment, the fog had dissipated, and they could see the massive thing for what it was. It was a massive whale, and the frightening aspect was that its massive jaws was open and facing the downstream escape. Most likely, it was lazily catching all the fish that got trapped in the current that carried them from their home sea to the whale's waiting stomach. The whale seemed to be completely oblivious to the ship that was heading directly towards its jaws. Luffy started to laugh, but his crew remained terrified. Some attempted unsuccessfully to guide the ship away from the big whale, but the tide kept them on track. They soon found themselves sailing right through the whale's jaws and into the beast's guts. As the whale closed its jaws, they were all enveloped in darkness. The whale had gotten its fill of food this time and was ready to resume its assault on the impenetrable mountain. He dove into the water and started swimming away from the mountain, intending to pound it with himself. The Straw Hats were still alive, much to the amazement of the crew. They were on a peculiar greenish sea, with a beautiful blue sky and clouds above them. They could see a little island ahead of them with a cottage on it. Are we hallucinating? Usopp was taken aback and inquired. Are we alive, or are we dead? Zoro was the one who responded. Didn't we gotten eaten by a whale? Nami had inquired. Then we're both dead, Zoro said. A voice was heard before anybody could comprehend what was going on. Hello there, the crew was still trying to figure out where they had ended up. It almost felt surreal. Nami questioned as she peered around, are we still alive? No, we are dead, Nami. It seems paradise isn't full of gold as you dreamed, Nijiko teased. earning a chuckle from Luffy and a pout from Nami. "I feel too alive to be dead," Zoro said, his eyes looking around, trying to make sense of this strange situation. "That whale devoured us, right?" Nijiko questioned the whole situation. She even thought this was some kind of strange dream. "Maybe we are dreaming, but this is an extraordinary one," Sanji thought as he took in the peaceful surroundings. "Perhaps," Zoro wondered, scratching the back of his skull. On the tiny island, there stood a home. There was even a fold-up chair put up on the grass in front of it. "How do we wake up then?" Nami said, her gaze fixed on Usopp and Zoro. "Is not a dream, Nami. If it were, you would see gold everywhere," Nijiko countered, earning another chuckle from Luffy. "Maybe an exciting adventure is awaiting us," Luffy said, grinning, not taking the situation as seriously as the others. "I'm not sure I would want to continue this adventure," Usopp commented. Having a powerful captain had its benefits, but he thought that Luffy sometimes simply forgot that not everyone was as powerful and as brave as him. "There's something wrong with the clouds," Sanji observed as he looked up at the sky. Usopp agreed, "Hey, you're correct. The water in front of them was propelled high into the air. The birds aren't moving either." Suddenly tentacles started coming out from underneath the water, a squid. "What the hell is that?" Usopp panicked. The crew prepared to attack. 3 harpoons were thrown from the house before the Straw Hats could assault. The squid was quickly killed when all 3 weapons found their target. "Now what?" Nijiko said, perplexed by the unexpected shift in the scenario. It hadn't been even an hour since they entered the Grand Line, and they were in danger all the time, from whales devouring them to squids attacking them out of nowhere. "Someone's there," Usopp said, pointing with a finger. An elderly guy emerged from the shadows of the building. He was bald on top, but he had long white hair that reached beyond his shoulders and grew from the back of his head. On his chin was a similar white beard that seemed to point both left and right. He was dressed in a red shirt with green and yellow motifs, blue shorts, spectacles on his quite huge nose, and many bracelets on his left arm. What baffled the crew was what seemed to have flower petals sprouting out of his head, separating the bald top from the white hair underneath the petals. "Hello there." Needless to say, the crew was even more perplexed at this point. The old man made eye contact with the crew. The pirate crew immediately felt the uneasy feeling he was leaving. Luffy stood in the front of his crew, glaring daggers at the old man who walked towards a chair, their glares intensifying. Zoro moved his hand on his swords when the old man's next move shocked them. He opened a newspaper before sitting down as if nothing had happened. This caused the crew to deadpan. "What the heck, old man?" shouted Sanji, startled by the abrupt change in attitude. The elderly guy nonchalantly cocked his head in their direction. Usopp roared at him, pointing his slingshot at him. "What the hell is your problem?" The ropes kept moving, pulling the giant squid towards the tiny island. After a few seconds of intense looking, the elderly guy said, "Put them down, or someone will die." As he talked to the group, his harsher voice was calm. Luffy wondered just who this guy was. He didn't look weak, despite being old. "Oh, and who would that be?" Sanji asked, ready to attack if the elderly decided to attack them. "Me," the elderly guy said flatly, practically slamming the crew onto the deck with his deadpan tone. "Damn it, old guy," Sanji screamed at the elderly gentleman who was calmly reading his newspaper. "Hey, old man, who are you, and where are we exactly?" Luffy asked as he stood in front of the crew, eyeing the elderly warily. Zoro could see from how Luffy was acting that this strange old man wasn't someone to take lightly. "Don't you have manners, young pirate? You should introduce yourself first," the elderly spoke as if trying to teach manners to Luffy of all people. "Oh right, my name is Monkey D. Luffy. I'm the captain of Straw Hat Pirates, and this is my crew." Luffy introduced himself before gesturing at the crew behind him. The man's eye widened slightly at the name of the young pirate before returning back to normal almost immediately. "My name is Crocus, and I'm the lighthouse keeper of the Twin Capes. I'm 71 years old, a Gemini, and my blood type is AB, and I don't like strangers." This caused the crew to tense slightly except for Luffy. "As for where you are, you've barged into my private resort. How dare you ask me questions? Where do you think you are in the stomach of a mouse?" Crocus said, raising an eyebrow. "So we were actually eaten?" Usopp shivered as he gazed around. "But this doesn't seem like the interior of a whale's gut. Did someone paint everything here? I don't want to be eaten. Nami shouted in disgust while Luffy was wondering if this is how food feels inside a stomach, soon coming to the conclusion that it wasn't that bad. There's the exit, Crocus said with a bored tone, indicating to the side, unless you'd prefer to walk out the rear end. Turning to investigate, the Straw Hats saw a massive metal door on the painted sky's side. Zoro couldn't help but wonder, why is there a door on a whale? Nami sighed deeply, what the heck is going on anymore? She had had enough of the continual changes and shocks today. Even Nijiko was quite surprised by the sudden turn of events. Usopp questioned Crocus, gesturing from the entrance to the painted stomach, did you do all of this? I have a lot of free time here. It can get quite boring, so why not make it less miserable and add a little paint, Crocus said while reading the newspaper. Let's get out of here. This place is giving me a headache, Sanji said, not exactly sure if it was the strange old man or the place they were in. The water going merry was sailing started to tremble and roil, shooting waves into the air. What now? Nami screamed as she strained to retain her balance. Crocus closed his eyes in a bit of sadness, knowing what was going outside, before grumbling, back at it again, Laboon. Hey, look, said Usopp pointing at the island the old man was standing. Due to the water moving around, the strange ship the old man was standing on started moving around due to the waves showing that it was covered in the metal underneath. Zoro roared at Crocus, who is Laboon? What's going on, old man? This whale's name is Laboon, Crocus said calmly, not bothering with the acid waves that were way too close. Luffy wondered who this old man was. This was no ordinary old man. In a way, it reminded him of his grandpa. He's banging his head into the red line, just like he's been doing for the past 50 years. The elderly man muttered as he gazed down. The Straw Hats were stunned and perplexed. Those wounds, Nami said, stunned, remembering the giant scars of the whale. Its skull was full of scars. Did they all come from crashing into the red line? Is he attempting to destroy the massive wall by crushing into it? Usopp wondered, puzzled. The whale isn't our problem, Zoro said emphatically. We simply need to get out. As the crew tried to leave, Crocus dove into the swirling acid waves and started swimming as they conversed. What did he just do? Nami said, startled. He dived straight in, he's going to get digested. Crocus scaled a ladder that went up to a vast platform with ease, dispelling Nami's fears. Miss Wednesday, two odd-looking people stood in front of the metal doors, their backs to them. We are doing this, said the man of the duo, his tone somewhat effeminate. He wore a golden head, red-orange hair and green clothing. Two stylized nines were drawn just below his eyes on his face. Miss Wednesday, behind this door is the whale's stomach. Once we get inside, it will be easy to kill it, but we need to watch out for the old man. Once you see him, shoot him. Yes, Mr. Nine, exclaimed the female, a lovely, thin, and voluptuous lady with blue hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her shirt had concentric rings on it and was spaghetti-strapped. One enormous pair was placed on her tummy, and two more were placed on each of her plump breasts. Their clothes were weird even by pirate standards. They would easily be noticed in a crowd full of people. Miss Wednesday wore a beige coat with a fuzzy collar that hung over her shoulders as well. Mr. Nine warned her, ready. Miss Wednesday. We'll open the door with a 3, 2, 1 baby, don't let down your guard. She said forcefully, Roger, Mr. Nine, I'm ready at any moment. With that, they both slammed the door open before announcing with a loud voice, this whale belongs to us now. The old man glared at them while the pirate crew was thinking from where they had come from. Sanji immediately noticed the beautiful lady with long blue hair. You again, how many times do I have to teach you this lesson, weird people, the old man said, ready to throw them into the acid water. Mr. Nine just brushed off his threat like a fly before both of them aimed their large guns at the old man. Luffy prepared to protect the old man just in case, but it seemed that was totally unnecessary. As both Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday aimed their large guns at him, the old man suddenly disappeared from view, much to the shock of everyone. Not even the pirates saw him move, except Luffy, whose eyes moved to look at him, standing right behind Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday, who were still trying to see where he went, not knowing he was standing behind them. I hope you know how to swim, a voice spoke behind them before both of them were thrown to the acid water below. Mr. Nine shrieked in panic, "Oh my, Miss Wednesday, we're going to land in the acid sea." The two dived into the stomach acid's roiling waves. "Who are those guys? How long were they inside the whale?" Luffy said inquiringly, not understanding from where they came from. Nami pondered on that but, in the end, decided that it wasn't worth thinking. Soon both of them came out to the surface, moving their arms around like headless chickens while shouting for someone to help them. "Please help us, should we attempt to save those two weirdos?" Zoro wondered, pointing to the two morons. "Sure, Zoro, Usopp," Luffy ordered, and they both sighed. After being saved, the woman with blue hair was kneeling on the deck, coughing water as she tried to catch her breath. Sanji was looking at her with heart in his eyes while the other guy was paying more attention to their surroundings and the people who saved them. The air-shaking sound of Laboon's shouting ferociously reverberated through the stomachs of all of them. The majority of people shielded their ears from the noise. Just feeling the tremors in their bones was enough. Then everything seemed to come to a halt. The acid waves ceased swirling, and the stomach settled down. The whole corrosive sea was calm and peaceful again in a matter of minutes. "Is calm now," Nami said. "Maybe we can leave now," she said, looking at the calm water. "Hopefully, but first, what do we do with these two?" Zoro said as he glanced over at the two agents. Miss Wednesday standing as she was trying to remove the water from her hair and Mr. Nine lying on the deck soaking from his plunge in the stomach acid. Miss Wednesday looked at the people around her before noticing the pirate flag. She turned to her companion, "Mr. Nine? These are pirates," she murmured before noticing the blonde with strange eyebrows drooling over her like a dog. "Yes, I see it, Miss Wednesday, but maybe if we speak to them, they'll understand?" "You thugs are still skulking about here," Crocus screamed as he leapt from the gate and onto the Mary. "You will never hurt Laboon while I draw breath." "They tried what?" Luffy yelled out, leaving out a wave of Conqueror's haki, causing both strangers to feel uneasy, but it was a tiny bit. The wave of Conqueror's haki didn't go unnoticed by Crocus, whose only reaction was his eyes widening slightly before going back to normal. Mr. Nine fired back at Crocus, "Taking down this whale is our objective. This time, we will not let you get in the way of our whaling mission." Luffy cocked his head. "What are we supposed to do? Maybe we should have just left them where they were," he said, looking over at Zoro. "Maybe you're right, Captain," Zoro shrugged, his right hand reaching for his blades. "Usopp, tie them up," Luffy shrugged. Mr. Nine was about to protest when he felt the blade of a sword on his shoulder. Looking behind him, he saw the swordsman almost daring him to move. Mr. Nine broke into a flop sweat as he shakily placed his hands behind his back to be bound. The guy with the orange hair was swiftly tied up and sitting on the deck. Soon the crew and Crocus settled down. Nami told Sanji to prepare something for everyone while they were waiting. "Join us, Crocus," Luffy said with a grin, "I've got a lot of questions." The Straw Hat team, Miss Wednesday, and Crocus were all seated and enjoying Sanji's food and tea in a matter of seconds. Nami and Nijiko complimented Sanji for the hood tea and food, causing Sanji to whirl around with hard eyes. "Laboon is an island whale," Crocus explained as they all waited for the sedated Laboon to emerge from the water. "It's the world's largest whale species, and it normally only lives in West Blue. These guys here," he gestured towards the tied-up Mr. Nine and then Miss Wednesday, "come from a nearby town. They've been trying to kill Laboon for his meat. Laboon would probably feed their village for at least 2 to 3 years. So Laboon is one of the largest creatures in the world," Sanji said, while Usopp thought if anything was larger than Laboon. "Yes, but there are larger creatures than Laboon, sea kings. They are the size to move islands." He stopped as he let the information settle in. The crew and even the strangers were quite surprised. Luffy leaned forward, wanting to know more. "But the largest is probably an elephant that I have heard of, the largest elephant. The size is something you can't comprehend, larger than the sky itself," he finished, earning shocked looks from everyone. They couldn't understand how an animal could be that large. Deciding to turn the subject back on track, "But why is Laboon slamming his head on the red line? What is he trying to achieve?" Nami wondered, perplexed as to why the giant whale was injuring himself. "Many years ago, a group of pirates like you came down from the reverse mountain. Behind them was Laboon. They had sailed the West Blue together. The road was too dangerous, therefore, the captain asked me if I could take care of Laboon until they returned," But it has been so many years, he said sadly. Remembering the pirates, they loved to sing, that was for sure, especially the tall one. He remembered how they used to ride on top of Laboon, smiling and joking. Laboon is a whale that travels with their kind in pods, but for Laboon, these pirates were his kind. The old man finished his story. Silence took over the crew. Luffy felt sad for the big whale, even if it was the said whale that ate them. Eventually, the island ship and Going Merry were sailing beyond the metal gates, leading to a long canal. This caught by surprise everyone. How did you build this? Usopp wondered out loud while inspecting the canal. He knew how to make things himself and was quite astonished by the work. I can't heal him from outside, so I build these canals to help him. I might not look like it, but I'm a doctor. I had my own office a long time ago and even served as doctor to a pirate ship, the old man explained. A doctor? Luffy inquired, his smile broadening. Do you want to JD immediately without thinking? I'm too old to watch over a group of young pirates, Crocus said, and besides, who would watch after Laboon? That's a young man's adventure. Soon they came outside. The sun shining brightly in the sky was a welcome sight for the pirate crew. We are finally out, Luffy exclaimed as he was standing on top of Going Merry's figure smiling brightly. Now that they were finally outside and not in danger of becoming whale food, Zoro started before pointing at the two. What are we going to do with these idiots? Leave him tied up for now. They don't look to want to cause trouble, but I don't want them hurting the whale again, Luffy said, his eyes icy. If they try anything, cut them down, Luffy added with a voice that sent shivers to everyone's body. Zoro just shrugged his shoulders. Let's see if they have anything valuable, Nami said with a sadistic grin on her face that caused both Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday to pale at the pirate. We have nothing valuable, Miss Wednesday tried to say, but Nami checked anyway, soon only finding a weird object. It was a glass bauble with a leather ring around it. She took it in her hands and looked at it closely. Inside the glass, it resembled a compass needle hung on a thread. The crew turned to the old man, soon asking how long it had been since they left Laboon here. Soon the ship stopped in front of the lighthouse. 50 years? They've kept him waiting a long time, Luffy said as he sat on the grass beside Crocus Lighthouse. At the same time, Nami was examining the bizarre object she had borrowed from Mr. Nine. This is the Grand Line, Sanji sniffed as he smoked a cigarette. Those people said they'd be back in a few years. It's been 50. It's very obvious of what their fate was. The cook said before lighting up a cigarette, they're dead. He'll be waiting here for the rest of his life. That's terribly sad, Usopp said, shaking his head and staring at the massive whale. I'm afraid reality is much crueler than that. I received word from a credible source a long time ago that the pirates had failed and fled the Grand Line, Crocus said regretfully, feeling his eyes welling. What? They abandoned Laboon here. Do they not have a heart? Nami cried furiously. She herself remembered how Arlong had taken away her family. Nami, there are many things that could have happened. You shouldn't judge without knowing the details, Nezuko countered, despite herself not liking the thought of them simply abandoning Laboon. Before Nami could say anything to her sister, Nezuko continued. Wait a minute. They would have had to cross the calm belt to escape the Grand Line, turning to the elder man. The old man simply nodded his head. But even if they're alive, they'll never come back here. The seasons, the climates, the ocean currents, even the air currents, everything about this place is an unpredictable nightmare, Crocus confirmed with a nod. As a result, they ran, more concerned about their lives than the promises given, Sanji said, shaking his head. Then they abandoned Laboon, Usopp cried, clearly angry about this. And he still believes in those heartless bastards even after so many years. Even Miss Wednesday felt her eyes welling up, suddenly feeling like shit for trying to harm the whale. But her reaction wasn't noticed by anyone except Nezuko, who grew a small smile on her face. Luffy kept quiet, his eyes looking at the poor whale. Nami looked at the elderly man. Why don't you tell him? He understands human language, right? Why keep him in the dark? Her tone sounding desperate. I did tell him. I told him everything, but he won't listen, he explained, remembering the day very well, more than he wanted. Laboon, I need you to listen to me. I have something to tell you, Crocus said to the whale, now the size of a ship. The people that left you aren't going back. I'm sorry, but they're gone. They have fled the Grand Line. Crocus stopped letting Laboon understand what he was saying. I know they're your friends, but they're not coming back, Crocus finished. Laboon's eyes started welling up before he left out a loud cry. Laboon, stop, he shouted, hoping his friend would stop, but Laboon kept moving his body around, causing large waves to crash over where Crocus stood, soon rushing towards the red line, smashing against the rock. Laboon, stop, Crocus pleaded, but Laboon didn't stop. He looked up at the big wall before crying again, almost telling the red line to give him his friends back. Crocus looked down, but after all these decades, if he accepts it, he'll lose his reason for waiting for so long. He has no way home, and even if he did, he'd never be able to return. Look at those wounds on his skull. If he continues bashing his head on the red line, he'll undoubtedly die. We've been together for 50 years. I can't forsake him, even if they violated their promise to me as well. Luffy looked at the red line, that wall is separating him from his friends. Soon a grin appeared on his face. Laboon, yelled Luffy at the top of his lungs, making sure the giant whale heard him. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I make you this promise right now. We'll return to this place once we sail around the Grand Line. If we happen to come across any of your old friends along the way, I will bring them back here to you. So, until we come back here to see you again, never hurt yourself. Biwu, Laboon's colossal eye began to tear up. This man. Crocus' eyes widened as he saw Luffy's actions. The old doctor saw someone else at that moment. Captain Roger? Luffy, Nami thought, looking at her captain with love in her eyes. He was such a good man. Nijiko felt her heart beating faster from what Luffy just said. Even Miss Wednesday was quite surprised to hear something like that from a pirate of all people. Laboon, on the other hand, flung his head back and let forth the most joyful howl Crocus had ever heard from him in years.